Good morning. This is Dreamingstitcher, otherwise known as AM by my channel name, here with flosstube number 5. I have a few things for you today. I wanted to start though with some comments on sisters and on life before I get to the stitching, which I promise there will be stitching, but please feel free to fast forward if you don't want to hear the other parts, because after my last video I felt I needed to say something. My sister is awesome and wonderful and has been working terrifically hard for us, and I think I said that last time, but I was also expressing how stressed she had left me, and she did. I don't want to minimize the stress part of it, but she has been working her tail off to help us, and so I kind of wanted to explain that the main problem is because she and I see things differently. And so I have sort of a little demonstration for you here today that may be completely uninteresting to you, so feel free to fast forward. But it's kind of my attempt to show how I think about my life and how she looks at life, because they're very, very different, and that's what causes conflict. To me, my life, and I'm sorry I grabbed some props here because I hoped they would help you visualize what I wanted to say, is its own little self-contained thing. I'm reaching for my stuff, and so I went and grabbed a big glass bowl that's supposed to show life. Here we go, a bowl that everything goes into, big, glittery, clear, you can see it all. I'm not in control of life before mine, I'm not in control of life after mine, I'm not in control of what's around it, but what goes in is what I'm dealing with in my personal experience, and everybody is like that, and I know my sister has her own bowl too. Now in life, there are lots of things to do. Some of them are the good, happy things. For that, I found some little flappy, soft, they're easily run over by the other stuff, but the things you want to do, the reading, the stitching, watching old movies, gaming, listening to beautiful music, crafting, practicing your instrument, all the nice, happy things, watching sunsets, and they go into the bowl, and they're definitely in there, but they're easily covered up and overwhelmed by a lot of the other things. Some of the other things are recurrent. I grabbed a super ball, You got to picture a lot of these super balls. Why a super ball? Because they bounce right back out after you're done with them. These are the daily things that everybody deals with that are filling up your life. The laundry, the dishes, picking up your prescriptions, putting gas in the car, taking care of your bills and your taxes, cleaning the litter boxes, looking after parents and pets if that's what you've got, or kids and spouses otherwise, planning your meals, doing the cooking, getting the groceries, doing the cleanup, making the appointments for yourself, and if you're looking after others, for them, all of it, the housekeeping, every single thing that as soon as it's done, you know it's coming back again. Whether it's a daily thing or a weekly thing or annual like taxes, it's always coming back, and your life is full of those. Picture lots of those in the bowl. Okay. Then there are the things that are more of a one-time thing, that once you take care of them, they come out of the bowl and you don't have to deal with them anymore. They come in all shapes and sizes. I picked a little rock to show. These are your lists of stuff you need to take care of. Right now, that might be things like cleaning up my parents' house in terms of getting the donations taken to the charitable places, having some of the beds removed so that we can bring in a hospital bed, stuff like that that you know how to handle. You can figure out very easily how to deal with it. It just has to be done. And there's lots of those in the bowl. Okay, then there are the jobs that are much bigger, that you can express very simply, like saying, I need to clean the shed. I need to clean my parents' garage. They come in all shapes and sizes too, but believe me, they're a lot bigger than the little jobs, because when you say clean out the shed or clean out the garage, it's actually a major undertaking. It's like this little thing that might be a piece of cleaning out the house where you say get out the beds. There's a whole list of all the things that you need to do on the big jobs that are waiting for you. They're kind of pending, they're always there. Then there's the stuff that is a little more difficult to deal with. You should be able to check it off your list, but it's pricklier and more problematic. I've got little nettles to represent that. they're not really recurring like the super balls. Yes, they come in their own shapes and sizes like the rocks, but they're a little less pleasant to deal with. Things in my case, for example, like, I don't know, I'll just pick one. Got some cars that need service. That should be one of the typical things, but they're my parents' cars, and at the moment I've got two that are not running, and I've got nobody to help me get them to the shop. And how am I going to get them there? When am I going to get them there? Because my free time's on the weekends and the shop isn't. And I don't know, it comes with its own complications. Some are worse than others. The parent who's deceased was into investing in land notes, and we've been carrying 3 of those for some time that haven't been paid on since the bottom fell out of the land market. And it's not like we own the land. We could go through the process of, I don't know if foreclosure is the word, but we could get advice from somebody on how to, I guess, kick off the person who's not paying. But they're not able to pay. It wouldn't do any good. And we can't sell it to anybody else for what it's worth. So it's just sitting there waiting for the person to either pay, because they're actually a good person. The problem is they over-invested themselves and they own land all over the county, including the notes that are owed to us, and they would pay if they could pay, and they just can't. And I don't know, I won't even go into the complications of that, but they're prickly. They need to be taken care of. They're not going anywhere. They're part of my life. Okay, then there's the stuff that you're avoiding. I wanted to get big clear balls for this, but basically they're things you can see through and around and you don't really want to look at, but they're in there. The emotional stuff, like dealing with the mortality of the parent that's not doing so well right now, or the sibling who has completely wrecked life and is going downhill and doesn't want to fix anything, and you all love the sibling and you all want to do something, but there's nothing to be done when the sibling won't recognize the problem, and it's easier to pretend it isn't there than to confront it face on. But psychiatrists and psychologists, I'm sure, will tell you're going to have to deal with the emotional stuff eventually. It's in there. You might be able to see through it and around it and pretend it isn't there, but there's emotional baggage. That's part of my life. Then there's the grit. The little things, and it doesn't take this many, but it was the only gritty, sandy thing I could find, that just sort of add annoyance to the mix. Things like chronic sleep deprivation, health issues. Just imagine them sprinkled over everything, over all the little recurring things you have to take care of, over all the little prickly problems you don't want to deal with, around all the emotional things you're not facing, just adding a little flavor to all the jobs, big and small, that are in there. And then there's the dysfunctional stuff. I don't really have a good thing for the dysfunctional. Imagine that this little jar is filled with something sticky. Dysfunctions like compulsive spending and other issues that you know you have, and sprinkle them over the mix, and that's part of your life too, because they're gumming up the works. They're in there whether you want them or not. And then there's the one thing that this is a little too small to represent, but it's kind of a self-contained unit, rarely leaks out into the rest, but it's there and it pushes down and everything else is pushed around it. The job. Everybody's got to work, okay? Job is a pretty big piece of it. So there's my life, all this stuff, the recurring things, the tasks that can be taken care of and crossed off the list with just getting done, the ones that are a little more complicated or more annoying to deal with, the things that kind of add a little grit to the whole picture or gum up the works because they're part of the mess that is you, the emotional things you don't want to face, everything, all of it. Oh, and the ones that might grow into big problems, but you're hoping they won't, like the fact that you paid a ton of money to somebody to clean up parents' yard, and it isn't done yet. Oh, they're whittling away at it, but what are you going to do, especially when they come back asking for more money, which they've already done once, and they haven't even finished? Is that going to grow into a big problem? You don't want to know. So the bowl is actually overflowing with all of that. That's your life. And when I look at it, I see the whole deal. When my sister looks at it, she walks in, takes one look, and says, "You need to wash the floors." Really? That's what you see? She does. Because to me, everything in here is separate and concrete, and I'm aware of all of it, even the things I'm trying to avoid, like the emotional stuff or the annoying jobs. I know it's all there, and I'm sort of picking and saying, well, I'm going to do this now, and then I'm going to tackle that, and I'm going to think about that one tomorrow. And she has a different view. She walks in and sees the whole thing, and everything in it is of equal importance. It's like everything in here is a child. If there's 100 things in my to-do of life, they're all children, and to her you can't say, well, I took care of Tommy and Susie today, but I'm just too exhausted to deal with Jack. Jack needs dealing with too. Those floors are not going away. They're not going to wash themselves. Yes, you're going to need to wash them again tomorrow, or sweep them, or whatever it is you're doing to keep them clean. They'll be right back. But if you don't do them today, that super ball is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. If it would have taken you 10 minutes to do the floor today, and you wait and you don't do the floor till tomorrow, now it's going to take you 20. If you wait 3 days, it's going to take you 30. And in your head, you're thinking, yeah, if I wait 3 days, it takes 30 minutes. If I do it 10 minutes a day, every day for 3 days, it takes 30 minutes. The floor is going to get done sooner or later. Yeah, she doesn't see it that way. And if there were a scale or continuum to show people's viewpoints on life and housekeeping and whatever, all the stuff that's in here, she's probably much closer to normal than I am. I will admit that. She is not wrong when she says that things like that are going to get out of hand if you don't deal with them, because they're going to keep coming back. Actually, that's my problem. I say it's going to keep coming back. If I don't do it today, I'll do it the next time it comes around. She says, like I said, they're all important. She's able to look at every task as something separate and discrete that has to be tackled now. She doesn't seem to see the whole weight of it pressing on her like I do. I see all of it. I'm aware of all of it all the time and feel like I can't deal with more than this, this, and this right now. And she says, it isn't what you can deal with. It all needs done. All of it needs done. All of it needs done. She's not wrong. Okay? So that's where the conflict and the stress comes from. I'm feeling the weight and the burden of all the stuff in the pot. And she's just saying, deal with it, deal with it, deal with it. And that's just not me, okay? So please forgive my sister if I made her sound like not a good person, because she really is. When we put her on an airplane to go across the world to be with her husband in another country years ago, I sobbed when the plane took off. But I also know that if I had to live in the same house with her for any extended period of time, we would probably kill each other. So I love my sister. She's awesome. We just have different ways of approaching the world and dealing with what we deal with. So thank you for that. And you're listening, that is. And now I'm going to get to some stitchy things. Thank you for your patience. And on to some other stuff. Stitching. What have I been doing in the last 3 weeks? This is the third Sunday of the month. This is when I'm supposed to come to you and tell you what's going on. So I'm just going to grab things and tell you what's happening with them. I had my resolutions from the beginning of the year. I think I said in my last video that it was sort of like my own little mini personal year of whips that I'm trying to get done. So here's one of them. This is the Sampan, and I was not able to do very much with it last time, but there has been some progress now. Not a ton, because it turns out that in the last 3 weeks, especially the last 1 week, I just haven't been able to focus. I don't know if it's stress over what's going on with parent or what it is, but I've been doing one stitching thing after another. I've picked up most of my whips and done a couple of new starts that I'll show you. So I did do some of this. The last time, I believe, I had been in the sail, and I'd done like the first couple of sections of the sail down. Now it's further along. I've got more over here on the back side of the sail. I've started the next little sail over. I finished a lot more of the mountains. There's still a little bit more in this section coming down towards the sails. But there's more mountains, there's more sail. This piece does still need all of its back stitching. There's more to be done in the water. I did finish the sky. There was actually stuff going on in the sky that I hadn't had done last time, so that's in there. I don't know if I ever mentioned that a lot of that is blending filament. This is a kit from Jan Lynn called the Sampan, if you haven't seen my other videos. And I haven't been showing what it's going to look like because I think it's kind of fun to see it come together and to sort of guess what's going to happen next. But it's kind of running out of surprises because you can tell there's going to be sails and little mountains in water, and there's not much more to it. The back stitching will bring out some details that you can't really tell yet are there. It's not a ton of back stitching, but in the areas where it's going to be, that will make a difference. So there's my progress on the Sampan. I can tell my colors are not great today. I think the winter sun is just not as good as the summer sun was. Oh well. Okay, another piece. Last time I had two sort of finishes to show you, but to me they're not off my to-do list until they're fully finished. One of them was my little robin's nest from Artiste. I have found a mat and a frame for it, but I have to work on the blocking because you may or may not recall it had sort of a border around it that has to be really straight to the edge of the mat, so I need to work on that. But my little embroidered bird is in his hoop now. Last time I was sort of showing you what he might look like in his hoop. Here he is. He's done my first piece of embroidery that wasn't just a tea towel, and he's a fine little bird. And he's all finished, and he can go on a wall somewhere. Okay, what else did I work on that you had already seen before? Well, I was feeling badly that I hadn't shown you my white rabbit from Orenco. That's the chart that I've seen lots of different prints offered by this company, and I've never seen an actual finish of any of the pieces. So I'm very interested to see what they will look like if you do stitch them up. How much like the print do they end up looking? And I believe I told you that I was shocked to find that this one was only 30 colors because it was advertised as 48. And so this is really a simplified Orenco chart. It even said on it simplified. But I did make a little progress on him. However, I admit I sort of fudged it a little bit by picking the easiest part to do because I did feel guilty and I wanted to show some progress, so I picked the easiest section of the whole bunny. I did that section of his tabard where it's just a few colors so that it looks like he's grown, which he has. Let's see, get this on the right side. The bunny's grown, but I picked probably the easiest thing I could have done. Instead of working on his face, which I said he had 30 colors, there's probably 20 of them at least in the rabbit himself, in that face. And I've already done the sections where there are places where where a single color touches other blocks of the same color. A lot of what's left in his face, you'd be hard pressed to find any two squares touching on any side or diagonally that are actually the same color. So in other words, confetti. So I didn't do that. Instead, I gave you the tabard so that you could see he is growing. I haven't forgotten him. I am working on him. And I'm enjoying him. I enjoyed all the pieces that I worked on. And I was just trying to get my hands on each of them and do a little bit more. So if you're interested in the rabbit, I have not abandoned him. I'm going to keep working on him, and he is growing. Okay, another piece that you saw before, I had gotten in part, I'd started it. It's one that I've had a long time, but I started it to try out the Edmunds handy clamp frame. And that was this one called Birds of a Feather. And there's going to be two of them. And I'm working on the one that you see in the top of the picture, which is the little pointy-headed birds. Forgive me for not looking up what kind of bird they're supposed to be, that are in branches with berries. And I didn't do a whole lot more with it, but the branch has grown a little bit and the berry has grown a little bit. And these berries are sort of interesting because they're much more complicated than they look like they should be. There's maybe only 6 colors in the berry, but 3 of those sets of colors are different blends. So he's got some solid colors and 3 different sets of blended colors in that one berry, and then I've started the berry next to it. That's what that dark part on the edge is. But every berry is going to be like that, where they've got a lot going on in them. A lot of blends, a of stuff happening, and you can't necessarily tell on your end, but yeah, a lot of that's actually blended filaments. And the branch is growing slowly, and there's not much happening there, but I just wanted you to see that yes, I am working on it. I haven't forgotten him. He's coming along. So let's see what else there is. I told you that there were some new starts. So where to go with the starts? I had actually mentioned they were coming up in the past. One of them, I told you I was trying to use as inspiration a particular trilobite. I had shown you another trilobite finish I had that was from a free chart online where she did some beautiful trilobites, and the one I'm trying to make this look like is Elrathia. There's a portrait of Elrathia, and with my sister's help I had charted something out and I started it, and this is on the apparel linen that's, I don't know what count. Every time I measure it, it comes out, I'm doing 2/2, and it comes out like 19 squares to the inch, so I'm thinking it must be a 38 count linen, because no matter how I do it, that's the way it works out. But I was progressing along and I thought, that just doesn't look right. I haven't got the design right. It's not working for me. So I started again, and this one is ready for me to do something with it. This one I thought looks more like Elrathia. Much happier with that one appearing something like the finished product. He's still not exactly right. I'm sure you can see the big differences, but I think that the intended recipient will be much more able to tell that maybe that's Elrathia than my other version of it. So there he is, and he's so tiny because, I don't know, I couldn't work it out to a larger size that I was happy with. This other one I would have been fine with the size, and I had a mat picked out and everything, but I just wasn't pleased. So this one is probably going to have to go, instead of matting and framing, I think he's going to go in a little hoop. I have a little wooden hoop, and he seems like a much less substantial gift that way, but he's so tiny, I think that's what I'll have to do. And he's not perfect, but I think the recipient will forgive me. I am just not made to be a cross-stitch designer, I think. So what was my other start? It was something else that's needed for the holidays, as was the trilobite, and I know it's only October, but I was concerned about getting things done in time for the holidays. So I had showed you in my second video some of the ways I've been influenced by watching flosstube, and one of them was I went to 123 Stitch looking for a particular pattern because so many other floss tubers would mention it as a place to shop, and that gave me some confidence in shopping there. And I showed you some of the patterns and things I got, including my first set of tribal patterns from White Willow Stitching. And this is one of the tribal patterns, and I will probably show you which one, but I want to just give you a glance at it first and see if you can figure out maybe which one I'm working on. If you've seen any of them, you may have an idea, but what in the world could that be? Well, I'll show you in a minute here. But as you can see, I've chosen to go with white floss on a light blue background. I don't know if that's the best choice. The model was stitched on kind of a hunter's green that was a bit variegated, and I just didn't care for the model much, but it was done with winter white. And so I had also been considering doing this one, instead of doing it on light blue, I had considered, with, by the way, bright white blanc, I had considered doing red, which is a much more intense color, obviously, with winter white. And that would have looked nice also. I tried asking the spouse of the intended recipient and couldn't really get any input on which would be better. Sort of either one is lovely. So when it came right down to start stitching, I chose the blue, and I don't know if it was the best choice, but I've already got so much done that that's what I'm going with. And I can tell you the reason I picked that was because although I liked the red with the winter white, I was trying to think of decor, and I can't remember exactly what the home looks like. I have not been there for some time, but it seemed like this color combination was more likely to fit in with more decor schemes than a shocking bright red. You know, be really nice, I think. Maybe I'll do another one sometime on that. But I went with the easy one. Oh, look. I just saw, as I set that down, that I was talking about the blends on my little birds. I'm having some organization issues on that. Here's some of I've got all the blends in one bag together for the little bird. So here's a set of blends, here's a set of blends, here's a set of blends, so that I can sort of grab the right blended thing when I need to, and that has nothing to do with this, so I just saw it. There it is. So if you haven't figured it out, it's going to be the white rhino, the tribal white rhino, obviously. And so what we've got there is his tummy and part of his hindquarters. About that much. Let's see if we can get that where you can see it. The camera and I don't get along that well. So there he is, coming along. And I had been concerned, since this was my first tribal pattern, I didn't know what I was going to think of it, being all one color and everything, and not being realistic the way that I'm used to. But although it would be stretching it to call these mini finishes, each time you do a little section, it's like saying, oh look, I just did a music note. Oh look, I just did a diamond. Oh, here's a little square. Now I'm going to do an arrow. Now I'm going to do this thing over in his hindquarters that looks like a starfish that isn't quite finished yet. So when you do finish each little area, it's like, okay, I did that. You feel like you're accomplishing something as you move along. Even though the piece as a whole is nowhere near finished, it still seems like progress every time you finish a little tiny motif. And that's kind of fun. So I'm not at all bothered by it all being the same color. That actually makes the stitching a little more mindless when you need mindless stitching. So yesterday, when I was waiting for the charity group to come pick up the beds, and I was at parents' home waiting, I sat there stitching this because I didn't have to bring a lot of materials. I only had one color to worry about. All I had to do was look at what motif I needed to do and where to stitch it in, and there was no concern about having to concentrate on the stitching. I could just stitch and wait, and that was really nice. Okay, I think that's all the things I had on my stitching list for you. I did want to share one more thing. No, it's not going to be a mini lecture today because those probably don't go over very well. But I wanted to say something about organization of my stuff. Some people seem to like to talk about that, and I had referenced it in an earlier video and meant to show you a little more and never actually did. I said that I didn't use boxes for my floss, for example, and I had brought out a box that I didn't show you as a sample of what I do with the boxes I had purchased. I had some lovely boxes, and mine are full of things like rocks. Okay, because I did not find that bobbinating my thread and putting it in there really worked for me. However, the sister of a friend gave up stitching and passed along to me her collection of floss some time ago. And hers was beautifully organized and bobbinated the way you all are used to. And she wound them so neatly on the bobbins, and these have been really nice to have. It's all DMC, and I've really appreciated it. And so I do have some DMC stored that way. She gave me 3 boxes like this that are mostly full. As you can see, this one has some room left, and one small partial box that's littler than that. And so it's not as though I have no bobbinated flosses. I told you that some of my flosses are kept in little bags on rings, and that's what I've been doing with a number of my projects. And that things that used to be bobbinated, as I come to need them in a project, I'm putting them in the little bags. But I mentioned as far as storage, I'm keeping them in a card catalog. And I didn't really exactly explain that. I said, if you know what a card catalog is, you know what I mean. But old card catalogs, the shape and size is such that this one I've really rated to use. Oh, I bet that's banging on the microphone. My apologies. That was probably a really bad noise. But they're just the size, these little bags are the size of file cards. And so I can fill up the drawer, which was pretty much full before I started rating it to kit things up, and have them all in numerical order. And it works really nicely. These drawers are also a perfect size for the bags of things that I haven't separated out yet. Like here's my 3800s. They fit very nicely in a drawer in a bag. I have all the ones that have not been separated in bags like this by their number. The drawers are a perfect size for things like my Krynic bags, and even unopened packages of Krynic fit in there beautifully. Okay. The drawers are a perfect size for unopened boxes of collections of floss. They fit in there. So I have, I don't know, 8 or 10 drawers in this catalog with flossy stuff. I even have a drawer that keeps the empty floss away bags. I have a drawer with a box full of the rings. I have drawers for all of it. However, the card catalog itself has 60 drawers in it, 60. So the other drawers have all kinds of other stuff, including more rocks, fossils, office supplies, mini puzzles and games. I don't even remember what all. A lot of stuff in there, but it's great for flossy things. And that's how I keep mine organized. And when I want to do something new for a project, I go check out my drawers first and see what I've got before I go shopping. So that's my organizing. A little bit about the way I look at my life and the fact that my sister really is awesome and she just sees it differently than I do. So please don't pick on her. And yeah, something about my stitching. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll be back again, hopefully, on the 3rd Sunday of next month. My sister's coming again tomorrow and going to stay for about a week because we have both good news and bad news on Parent. Physical rehabilitation is sort of plateaued and no progress is continuing, so Parent is being released home. But progress has been enough that we hope after an initial period that's going to be incredibly expensive with 24/7 nursing care, that we're going to be able to cut back to shifts and have people there a couple of times a day, because physical therapists thought that might be possible. So we're hoping when Parent comes home, Parent will be able to stay in home with some professional care a few hours a day. Not going to be cheap, but Parent worked really hard and long for the pensions that will be paying for this, and is not rich by any means, but they should just cover it. And we have all of us as siblings figured that money is for Parent anyway. We don't care if we never see a dime of it. If things don't work out, then assisted living might be what we have to do. But that was just an update on that, and that's why Sister's coming back tomorrow, and I hope that she's as wonderful to have this week as she was on her last visit when she came for just a couple of days. That was between the stress video that I presented to you and now. She was actually back here once. The trip for her, by the way, is 400 miles each way. So she's really dedicating a lot of her time to come help us, and it may stress the heck out of me sometimes, but I want you to know she's awesome as well as stressful. So thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I hope that there was something in there. I know there was a lot of non-stitchy stuff today. I will try to stick to stitchy things in future, but I just felt bad with what I'd said about my sister being out there online. I thought I needed to explain a little bit more where the conflict and the clashes come from, so that you'll be more forgiving and not just base opinions on the fact that I was stressed when I talked about her. Okay, thank you. And as always, I know that there are beautiful things out there. Some days I just can't believe how gorgeous the weather is or how nice things are. And even if I'm avoiding some of the emotional stuff, like one of our barn cats is gone. We had him for about 10 years. Nothing good ever happens to a barn cat when they disappear. We've got coyotes in the neighborhood, and that's probably what happened. But I don't want to think about that. I want to look outside and say it's a beautiful day and know he's not here to see it anymore. And that's really, really sad. But it was going to happen sooner or later. And I can still see sunshine, and I can still see beautiful things and think how nice he was to have around when we had him. So find something beautiful in your days too. Deal with all the things you're dealing with in your lives. I hope you don't have too much of the sticky, gooey stuff pouring over what you do and complicating things like some of us more dysfunctional people have. but the cross stitching helps, and I enjoy your videos, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.